Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. So it's a pleasure for me to moderate this last panel discussion for today. And maybe to have a more intensive discussion, may I ask you to come up here in the front line, so maybe we can have a more direct interaction and you're not so far at the end of the room. So maybe I all invite you to come up for the first 3 rows, so that would be really great. Yeah. Okay, so with that, so not just one line, maybe some more. Okay, with that I would like to start and just briefly introduce the panelists, and they will introduce themselves as a next step then in more detail. So next to me I have Diana Peterson, so thanks for coming. She's Vice President for Business Development at Shire Human Genetics Therapies from the US. So welcome, and thanks for coming. So next is Don Rinnell. He is Executive Director from Amylin Pharmaceuticals as well in the US. So thanks, Don, for coming and joining in. And then we have Ravi Soda, and he is a Senior Director of Business Development for Actelion, Switzerland. So again, thanks to you for coming over. So, I mean, to start the panel, I thought it's also of interest for you to get a brief introduction into the companies that the 3 panelists are representing. So therefore, may I ask you as a first question to briefly present your company and introduce yourself very briefly again, your background, and then introduce the company that you are representing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Monica. So Shire is a mid-sized biopharmaceutical company, and it has 3 divisions. One division is our specialty division that sells, for the most part, a drug that's called Adderall and other types of ADHD drugs. The division that I'm in is the rare disease division, and then we have a 3rd division that has to do with tissue repair and advanced wound healing. So I'm the head of business development for the rare disease division. We have about 1,200 people in our division, sales of a little bit over $1 billion, and we sell drugs in about 50 countries around the globe. In Japan, we actually have had a rep's office since about 2008, and in January, just this year, we opened a KK, an actual legal entity that is Shire Japan KK in Tokyo. And we have staffed it now. I think we are in the high single-digit numbers, and we have all the corporate functions represented there. We also sell drug in various Asian countries, one of our drugs, through a partnership with Genzyme that's been very successful. And then another one of our drugs called Repligal, actually through a partnership with Dainippon Sumitomo.
Thank you.
I'm Don Rindell, and I'm with Amylin Pharmaceuticals. We're based in San Diego, California. And being the time at 4:30, I wish I had brought some California wine for all of you. But we're a peptide protein-based company focused in the diabetes space. We have 3 novel compounds that are on the market. We are commercially focused in the United States, and we're partnered with Lilly overseas. In the international market, we also have, in the Asian market, we have 3 collaborations that have been set up one with Biocon in India. It's a co-development of a novel diabetes compound. We have a relationship with Takeda Pharmaceutical in Japan in co-development of obesity compounds. And we also have a relationship with Shionogi Pharmaceutical in the rare disease super orphan drug for lipodystrophy. So we are focused in Asia with our collaborations. We've had a lot of European supply agreements and partnerships within Europe. Asia's a little bit newer for us. And more recently, we are now moving away from Lilly and setting up a new organization overseas.
Thanks.
Donald, first thing, it may be 4:45 here, but where I come from is 9 a.m., so I don't need a glass of wine. I actually need coffee instilled in my eyes as topical eye drops. But coming back to a serious business of business development, I already said a few words about Actelion in the morning because I was in a different panel. But just to give you a different perspective for those who are not here, we are a fully integrated R&D-based pharma company in Switzerland. We have 4 products on the market. We have sales of just under $2 billion. And we have our own affiliates, commercial affiliates in Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, as well as China. And we are based, we also have our own affiliates in Brazil, Mexico, Canada, US, all of Europe, and a few other smaller places like Australia, New Zealand. I shouldn't say smaller places since our chairman is here. Big places. But just coming back, just a few words on how we grew up on partnerships. Actually, Actelion is a fairly young company. It's only 13 years old, and it grew out of in-licensing a compound from a big pharma and developing it ourselves. And along the way, we have grown by licensing in products as well as growing by acquiring products and doing specific focused merger and acquisitions. And in particular, I'm pleased to say that we in-licensed a very good product from Nippon Shinyaku in Japan. And that was, we believe, was a highly competitive process, and we were able to secure rights to outside Japan. And if there is time permitting, I'm happy to discuss that particular success factor in that area in detail.
So, thank you. So, I think you in part already touched this, so I think what is of interest for us is certainly what are your activities here in Asia, and also why are you active here in Asia? So what makes it kind of attractive for a small and medium-sized enterprise to be active here in Asia? Maybe you can cover that. Yeah.
So for the rare disease business at Shire, it's really all about expanding the markets and giving patients that don't have access currently to life-saving drugs that treat rare diseases, giving them access to these drugs. The secret really is in the orphan drug legislation. So the countries that have orphan drug legislation in place have protection for those drugs in the form of exclusivity and in some cases even reimbursement. So expanding into those markets and then helping governments in other Asian countries actually develop and file and implement new orphan drug legislation so that patients in those countries can also receive the benefit of drugs for rare diseases.
Yeah, for us, I think we've looked at Asia as a significant opportunity, especially in Japan. We are in the injectable business. It's fairly expensive. Our cost of goods are relatively high compared to small molecule peptides. The peptide costs are significantly higher. So Japan has become a very important market for us looking forward. From a size of market, it's still number 2. Although China is coming up very quickly, the reimbursement is very good, and we have gone through the reimbursement process very successfully and have significant opportunities from a cost of goods and reimbursement standpoint. From a how do we address cost of goods and proteins and peptides, that's one of the reasons we did the collaboration with Biocon. Biocon has the capabilities of not only being a very good development and co-development partner for us, but they can help us drive our costs down significantly. So we're looking to them as more long-term to help us on a global basis, not only from the traditional way you looked at India and China on API, but all the way through the manufacturing process.
Well, in many ways, Actelion is not so dissimilar from Shire in that our focus is also orphan disease and specialty business. And we see Asia as primarily a big market. And one of our indications, the drug that is used for pulmonary arterial hypertension, it requires a huge effort in diagnosing the disease. So we believe that there is a huge market here, and we believe that there is also unmet medical need because this is not diagnosed. So we believe that we are here for the long run. We already do a lot of clinical trials here. A number of our KOLs are here. So we believe that this region for us is very crucial strategically as well as in many other ways. We do not manufacture. Actelion products are manufactured by toll manufacturers, but we see the market as a strategic growth for us, for our business.
And in that respect, I mean, working together with the regulatory authorities, I mean, what is your experience with that? Are they supportive in introducing here orphan drugs, or what is your experience in that direction? Yeah?
So most of our regulatory experience to date has been through our partners, and we've been very successful. Our partners have been successful on our behalf. Our first launch for Shire KK, will actually be in 2014. So far that is going well.
Well, you know, for us in Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, China, and Japan, we have our own affiliates. So we have on-ground Actelion Limited, or Actelion KK in Japan, and we have our own sales force and our regulatory expertise in-house. So we believe that we have been fortunate so that, you know, we don't have to deal with a partner who helps us. We have our own regulatory expertise.
So, I mean, if it comes to Asia, I mean, we already discussed there are more developed areas, Tokyo or Japan, and there are other countries. So, I mean, how do you differentiate the landscape in Asia, and maybe also what would you position where in order to be successful on the long run?
Yes, so for us, the developed countries that have orphan drug legislation are Japan, Taiwan, and Korea. The developed Asian countries, and then others are coming along. So China actually filed for orphan drug legislation in 2009. Hasn't been approved yet, but hopefully it's at least moving forward. So again, for us, it's about helping governments, or taking advantage of, helping countries that have orphan drug legislation be able to provide more drug and increase access to their patients, and then of course helping the governments that don't have the policies being able to implement them.
Well, for us, being focused in diabetes, there's no question there's a race going on, again, between China and India, who can be number one in diabetes patients. And so for us, ignoring Asia would be ignoring the largest potential areas for diabetes today and diabetes growth. Clearly, it's expanding at an exponential rate, and surprisingly, Asia is no exception.
Well, one country that we have not mentioned in this session is India. Currently, we are not present in India. We don't have any operations or partners in India. But if I look at strategically, India is one country that is different from China, Korea, Taiwan, or Japan. Or not so much from Japan, but certainly from China, Korea, and Taiwan. In that, unlike those other countries, India has a fairly regulated business outside India with their own affiliates in most part of Africa, North Africa, South Africa, as well as other parts of Southeast Asia. And although it doesn't apply to Actelion right now because we are not present, it could really be an interesting partnership with an Indian company that allows you to reach out to other regions in Africa as well as in Southeast Asia that other countries like Korea, Taiwan, and China currently do not have.
Hasn't your boss put a little pressure on you to get a deal in India?
Well, we're looking. I mean, you know, it's part of strategy. It's currently it doesn't quite fit into our strategy. And by the way, despite my looks, I'm actually Swiss.
And certainly something that is of interest for all of us is also what is your experience so far in Asia? I mean, what are also kind of positive experience, and on the other hand, which might have been hurdles that you need to overcome so far, yeah? So maybe you can share this with us.
Yeah, I think on the challenge, the positive side, of course, we have established very good partnerships and our collaborations have gone well. I think there was an initial concern. I think Kieran highlighted the intellectual property area. Clearly, that was something that internally our organization struggled with a lot before talking to any Indian or Chinese company or any Asian company. There's a perception in the United States that, you know, IP is at immediate risk when you do a collaboration, a development research collaboration. We have not had that difficulty with Biocon or the partnerships that we've had, so we feel very positive about that. I'd say from a developmental point, one of the things that has worked well is all our collaborators, we encourage them to not only assign their smartest scientists, which always happens in a good collaboration, but also to put someone on the team from their side that has some experience with an American company. It's not so difficult in India to find people that have been trained in the US and come to India on the business side, because I think one of the things that happens with most deals is when deals break down, it's not because the science goes bad. Most of the time it's the business the companies start to diverge and move apart, and I have a personal bias that alliance management between the two organizations that do the deal is critical. If you want to realize those milestones and that end game royalties, it's absolutely critical that you figure out how to get two good marriage counselors. You need a marriage counselor on their side and a marriage counselor on your side to make that deal work long term.
Well, it's interesting, one of the earlier panelists, I think it was Emma, she mentioned the deals are very difficult in China, and I think she was being modest. Deals, I think, are excruciatingly painful in Asia, Asia in general. But it's sweet pain, actually, you know, because there's no gain without pain. I think in Asia, unlike other places, other countries, Europe or the US, it takes a long time to do a deal. But once the deal is done, it stays with you. You know, the relationship stays with you for a long, long time. And in my previous company, Novartis, we did a deal in the Indian subcontinent, in India. And, you know, like the nature of our business is an early preclinical compound. The compound may die, but they really, even after 8 years, I get 5 kilos of mangoes every mango season, you know, and I no longer work for Novartis. And I think this is really important. And the other thing is that if you give in the collaboration or in the relationship, if you make it two-sided, so, you know, if you allow them to learn, they have an incredible, insatiable desire to learn from those who know more. So, you know, US companies or European companies. So if you allow them to learn, they really would be your partners for a long time. I think those things are really important, that you cannot have a deal where you say, I in-license and I'll send you royalties if the compound gets on the market. They really want to learn. And some of these companies have very good local commercial infrastructure that you can't avoid using.
Thanks. Diane, you would like to add something to that? Or? Great. So maybe I can open also the discussion to the floor. Are there any questions you'd like to address to the panelists, so at the moment?
We'll have to walk up.
Can you come up here? So otherwise we may not hear you.
Hi, I'm Hui Sing from TVM Capital, so we're a life science investment firm.
Can you maybe come up here? Otherwise, I'm sorry, we cannot understand your question.
Oh, really? Wow. So much for mic technology then. My question is, given that I know some of the products that you sell, the price point is quite high, and we talk about orphan drugs, so we're not trading off volume versus price point. So in any of the things that you're doing with your partners or any of the things that you're looking to access and build a market in this part of the world, price point is very critical if you want to go beyond, you know, the premium sector who can always fly to Switzerland or anywhere else to get treated for their drugs. What are you doing to bring down the price point for your product in Asia?
Well,
in our case, our price points are very high. It's, you know, a novel compound. The GLP-1s are still priced fairly high. And so within the developed markets, we have been selling at those price points. What we're doing very actively is working with companies like Biocon to look at our manufacturing capabilities. And as you increase volume, you will significantly reduce costs. However, at some point, you do reach a higher plateau than you will with a small molecule. We still have a cartridge that you build, you still have a pen, you still have a lot more manufacturing that you would see with a small molecule. So we are doing as much as we can to look at costs, look at our cost structure, and it's usually driven off of volume.
yeah, so we are aware of this real issue, and we don't have a simple solution. We realize that we are never going to reach the full potential of the drug throughout the region. We have a number of programs that allows patients to access the drug, because, you know, we believe that at the end of the day it's about the patient and the medical need, and we put that above everything else. So we do have programs, we do have support programs and some lower copay depending on how much the patient can afford. But you know, at the end of the day, it's really what is necessary for the patient.
Yep, and I agree very much with the sentiments that both of you put forward. When you have a very small patient population, there's no way to get around it. You just have to have a higher price. But then the more patients that you can bring on by expanding your markets into the other countries, hopefully the lower the total price will be able to come down.
Okay, there are further questions? Please come up.
Thank you. All this while, Asian countries mentioned have been Japan, India, China. So I wonder if you don't look, or why you don't look into other parts of Asia. I mean, maybe in the current situation, the GDP per capita is still low, but a lot of these Asian countries are growing very fast, and in like 5 years' time, they will take over. For instance, Indonesia or Thailand. Or is there any experience in those countries? Thank you.
Okay. I think if I understood you correctly, the question is whether there are any activities beyond China, Korea,
Japan,
and the main countries here in Asia, and Japan certainly. So also like maybe Malaysia or Indonesia or so,
Thailand
or any other countries. Yeah.
I think that's a very good question, because I know that if you look at Indonesia, somebody mentioned this morning, population of Indonesia was
250 million, and the GDP growth rate is close to 7%.
Yeah, you absolutely. I mean, there is clearly more needs to be done in the region. We believe that, at least in our case, pulmonary arterial hypertension affects everyone in every walk of life. It's not to any particular region. But we are a small company and we try to do as much as we can. But you know, we certainly look at other markets as well. We have other programs, I'm not sure how they are run, for accessing our drug in areas where it is currently not approved or not, you know, there are certain compassionate use programs that we also have.
Any further questions? So maybe then I have another question. I mean, we are talking now about mid-size pharmaceutical companies, so do you see any difference or between multinationals and maybe small and mid-size companies in the relationship in Asia? So are there maybe advantages or disadvantages you can leverage?
Yeah, so maybe one of the big advantages of being a mid-sized company is we tend to have fewer products. So we are able to focus a lot of efforts on fewer products. And for rare diseases, that's very important because the diseases are by nature uncommon, and there's a lot of education that has to go along with them. Education to be able to find and diagnose the patients and then tailor their treatment.
Yeah, and I think I would go along with that if you have a smaller focus, you have the opportunity to move a little quicker, or at least move as quickly. The other part that helps for international partners, it's a lot easier to understand an amylin with 3 products in our product line and get to know us. It's a lot easier for clarity of what our focus is going to be and strategic goals. It's a lot harder if you're looking at a Pfizer or a GSK because just the size. And so if you're developing a novel diabetes compound in Thailand or Indonesia or whatever, to approach a Pfizer or GSK gets quite complex. Is that a priority for them? Is that an area that they're really committed to? With amylins, it's very clear. It would be, yes, we're in metabolic disease, that's it. So we can move quicker, do a deal quicker than you would say in a major pharma.
I fully agree. And when we in-license, for example, the fact that we are a small specialty focused company, it goes in our favor because the licensor knows that the asset that we take on will be fully justified. We'll be focused on it, and it's not going to disappear in some project management realignment in big pharma. And I know that in Nippon Shinyaku, when we in-licensed their prostaglandin analog, I think this was very important that they realized that if we took their asset, we would be fully committed to it.
Yeah, I think that's an important point you are hinting to, which is a decision-making process which often takes a long time in multinationals. But on the other hand, multinationals have also an advantage quite often, which is their brand or their name, which is well known. Have you ever experienced any challenge related to that maybe your company was not known to a partner or to an in-licensing partner, so that you have first to build up trust in your brand? Maybe you would like to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a process that sometimes takes long.
And for us, I think the KOLs are very important. So we do try and entertain the KOLs around the world in the sense of working with leaders outside of just the US. They're the ones that can be a resource to help introduce your company, help you maneuver in the international arena as well.
Okay, so maybe then for the end of this session, maybe I can ask you all to have a kind of take-home message for colleagues who want to establish relationships in Asia. So maybe if you can share it with the audience, that would be great.
Well, we are very happy to be in Asia. We will continue to be in Asia. And we hope that we bring innovative medicines for unmet medical need.
I think our IMS colleagues said it well, that Asia is going to jump in importance over the next 5 years. So for at least on the American side, the companies that have not focused on Asia, they're going to miss out on a lot of growth opportunities.
And I would say it's very important to develop a local presence. So if you're going to go into Asia, do that. Develop a local presence very early and tailor your approach to each country.
Okay, so thank you very much. So I think we have heard that relationship is very important, building up a good relationship, then also having a local presence, and in order to really come up with a very good and intensive contact with your partner. So then I think you have a sustainable basis for a long-term relationship. So thank you very much for joining the panel today, and also for you for taking part in the discussion. So I wish you all a nice evening.